Alright guys, today we're going to talk about square roots with division and multiplication. So today's lesson is going to be a little bit hard towards the end, but in the very beginning it's not going to be too hard, but we'll get through it. So title for this one is Square Roots with Division and Multiplication. Okay, so for example, let's jump right into the examples. If I have a problem that looks like this, just kidding, it's a triangle, like this, where I have 81 over 100 like this, and 81 over 100 is the whole thing underneath the square root. If that's the case, well, you could break it apart and say that it's the square root of 81 over the square root of 100. Okay, and the square root of 81 is the same thing as 9, and the square root of 100 is the same thing as 10. So you're all done. That's it. Okay, yes, you can throw in an extra step and say that the square root of 81 is the same thing as 9 squared over the square root of 10 squared, because 10 squared is 100. And then that actually cancels out with the square root. And that's how you get 9 over 10. Okay, so just in case you're confused on where 9 over 10 came from, there's the work to show that. Okay, all right, let's do another example. Let's do an example that looks like this. Let's say I have the square root of 36 over 100, something like that. Okay, so, well, again, you can separate it to where it's the square root of 36 over the square root of 100. And the square root of 36 is 6. But how do we get that? Well, we know that 36 is the same thing as 6 squared. And we know that 100 is the same thing as 10 squared. And since we're taking the square root, squares and square roots cancel each other out. And we're left with 6 over 10. Now 6 over 10 can be reduced. They both have something in common, and the thing that they have in common is a 2. So you divide top and bottom by 2 to reduce the fraction, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So the final answer there would be 3 over 5. Okay, those aren't too terrible. Those are pretty straightforward. Now let's jump in a little bit harder. A little bit of the harder part. Okay, so let's go ahead and title this one hard part. It's not too bad. It's really not. You just have to know your multiplication facts. So if I have an example that says square root of 28. Now, no, that's not a perfect square, so it's not going to come out nice and pretty. Okay, but we can break apart 28. 28 is the same thing as what? Think of your multiplication facts and think of the ones that would give you 28. The one that I came up with is 7 times 4 is the same thing as 28. Okay? 7 times 4 is the same thing as 28. Now, let's keep going. 4 and 7. Well, 7 can't be broken down anymore, but 4 can. 4 can be broken down into 2 squared, right? 4 is the same thing as 2 squared. And 2 squared, since we're taking the square root, cancels that out, and what am I left with? Well, I'm left with 7, the square root of 7 times 2, or you could rewrite it and it'd just be done, is just 2 square roots of 7, just like that, because it's understood that there's multiplication right between here. That's multiplication, it's understood to be there. Okay, so the answer is 2 square roots of 7. Okay, let's do another one. Let's say I have, I don't know, square root of 54. Okay. Well, the square root of 54 is the same thing as what if you're thinking about your multiplication facts? Well, the one I thought of is 9 times 6. Okay, 9 times 6 is 54, so I can break it apart like that. Okay, now, you can break it apart again to where you say the square root of 9 times the square root of 6. You break it apart again. Now you have both of them individual. Okay, well, the square root of 9, what is 9 the same thing as? 9 is the same thing as 3 squared. So I can replace 9 with 3 squared. Now 6, is it a perfect square? No. And if I broke it apart again, I would get 3 times 2, and neither one of those work out either, so I just keep it the same. Now, what is the square root of 3 squared? Well, those cancel, and you're left with a 3. And then your square root 6. And you're all done. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's do one more and call it good. Okay, one more. Okay, let's say I have, I don't know, square root of 90. Square root of 90, why not? All right, think of your multiplication facts and what two numbers would end up giving you 90 if you multiply them together. The easy one that I thought of is 9 times 10. Okay, well, we can break that apart. Say it's the square root of 9 times the square root of 10. And then what is 9? Well, 9, we just did that one in the previous problem, and we said that it was 3 squared. So I can replace 9 with 3 squared. And keep my square root of 10. It didn't go anywhere. Bring it along. Okay. Now, where did this 3 squared come from? It came from the 9, because 9 is the same thing as 3 squared. And why do we do that? Because the square root cancels out a square. Okay. So this equals 3 square roots of 10. Okay. 3 square roots of 10. All right. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment on the video anywhere, preferably on Google Classroom so that I can see it immediately. If you post a comment on YouTube, I probably won't see it for a while because that doesn't come straight to my phone.